A lot of other people have actually gone long. I mean, Naren, for example, and we'll talk to him tomorrow, mentioned, according to him, that telecom was a good bet to take. But I think the difference might be that some people search for a much higher alpha compared to certain other people, and therefore that might be the gap out there too. Let's wait and watch. Okay, Chakri, stay on. So much more to talk about, but just quickly get in a sense of the charts as well, because while the SGX Nifty is dying down completely, it might be a very interesting day of trade today, and what hedges to take might also be important. Manav Chopra, Head of Equity Research at Indiabulls Ventures, with us on the show, as is Brijesh Singh, Senior Technical Analyst at Stock Access. Gentlemen, both of you, thank you so much for accommodating this interview request. Manav, let's start off with you. What's your approach to trade today? Are you sitting on the sidelines waiting for the indices to settle, or are you taking a plunge early morning?
Actually, we are going to see a lot of volatility for at least till 11:30, and you know, in that case, one important thing to note is that markets have already seen a very good base, and it's all set for a breakout on the upside. Most importantly, 11,900 is going to be a key trigger. And you know, once if the Nifty manages to surpass or sustain above it for another 15-20 minutes is when actually a trader can take a trade, because you can define your stop loss below that. So basis on this, I think considering the volatility, one should at least have a you know, if it breaks above 11,900, we expect a momentum rally which could last for another day or two, and will not be surprised to see if the you know, the news and the outcome is positive, the markets would open the gate towards 12,200 to 12,500. So keeping that in play, I think a stop loss of you know, so keeping that as a momentum, I think the PSU banks would play a very important role, and Nifty 12,500 is the levels that we are looking at.
So you're going to buy the futures, or you're going to?
Yes, it's going to be the futures, and see. Actually, since past few months, the markets have sustained and not able to break 11,800. So I think a buffer of 11,900 is important considering the volatility. And once if that breaks, looking at the overall position in the derivative data, I think 12,500 is quite possible.
What stocks would you trade?
I have two picks in this market. You know, my first buy call is on SBI, and basically from the PSU banks, we have seen SBI forming a very strong base. It has been in a very good uptrend, and since last 9 years, you know, SBI has been facing stiff resistance around the levels of 340, and it has managed to close somewhere around those levels yesterday. I sense if SBI manages to sustain and break above 350 today, will not be surprised to see a swift rally of you know, another 10 to 15%. So 385 could be the initial targets. And my second pick would be on HEROMOTO. Basically, the stock has observed a series of decline from its recent peak of 4,000 and is showing signs of bottoming at the current levels. The momentum indicators are showing some important support levels. At the current juncture, 2650 would be the stop loss for HEROMOTO, and we expect a rally towards 3,000.
Chakri, when we spoke about contrarian calls, I would like to add PSU banks into that list. I mean, most of them are trading with good enough valuations considering the peaks that they've come off from. But the only probable stock that people talk about is SBI from the PSU banking lot. We've actually seen results coming in from most of the other PSU banks, which have still disappointed the street. They've front-ended a lot of the provisions, but do you think that's probably the stepping stone to growth for them?
You know, SBI still looks good. And the issue with the other banks, it's not the valuations are cheap, but the uncertainty of which bank is going to be merged with some other government mandate is an issue, which means all the healthier ones, PSU banks, are going to absorb the less healthier ones, are the ones which are in problems. And the net combined entity will be an unhealthy one. And that's, I think, the reason why we are staying away from some of the other PSU names, because otherwise, from a valuation perspective, they're all very inexpensive.
But do you think that could be one of the things on the priority list of the new government?
You know, the thing is, we don't know what's the government intention at this point, how fast and how much can they do, because it's not just announcing mergers, because it also is a political decision. Of course, they can take the easy way out and do an HPCL, ONGC kind of merger, which doesn't touch anything else. It just creates a new entity. If that is the case, then we would go and buy, but I think we'll still wait out before we buy PSUs.
So then a lot of people talk about what to buy within those corporate-facing banks as well. Should I buy an Axis? Should I buy an ICICI Bank? Should I include an SBI in that mix and buy that over those other two? Or should I even go out as far as Yes Bank, because the valuations have corrected quite a bit, perceived valuations? what would your pecking order be, Chakri?
You know, I'd buy all the names that you just mentioned, whether it's because all of them have very similar issues and very similar outlooks. They've all had problems because of a bad corporate book, bad corporate season over the last few years. And if corporate picks up, and they all have changed their books, they all have a good mixture of both retail and corporate today. SBI today has 60% of its books coming from retail. So it's not just a corporate bank. So from that perspective, and so is Axis. So all these guys have copied each other.
Which is also another point. Retail gaining traction over corporate loans. Obviously, the bulk of your loan book is going to be coming in from corporates. But ICICI, for that matter, has started to focus more on enhancing the retail loan book.
But that's not. I mean, there is no choice to do that, right? I mean, the corporate capex is just not happening. You don't have a choice if you want to grow in the intermediate period than to focus on retail, because the consumer demand is the only demand that is there right now.
Indeed, and which is also slowing. So, and so the next thing is the consumer is slowing. A corporate was slow, kind of you expect an uptick. So overall, it evens out, and you can, as long as you maintain their guidance of loan growth rates, you're fine.
So then, Devi, another question would be that would you buy into these corporate-facing banks, and Chakri is comfortable buying all? And I don't know whether there's an outcome of, because it's difficult to predict which one will grow better, so therefore buy a bouquet. All of them will grow. Some will grow faster than the others.
With,
something like that.
With the biggest focus on financials.
Yeah, spread your bucket across. Or, Chakri, would you go out and buy the NBFC space, the good quality ones, because there almost 80-85% of the system is anyways paralyzed. So you're actually buying companies which have a larger runway for growth and very little competition.
Indeed, I think clearly yes, because you know the NBFCs, of course, there are 10,000 NBFCs in this country. Many of them have asset liability mismatches. Handful of them, you know, MM Financials, Magma Financials, there are tons of them, which are well-run NBFCs, are trading at very good valuations right now. So yes, there is a good amount of allocation that we will do for NBFCs also.
I want to take a few chart checks now. So yesterday's session saw IndusInd Bank report its numbers. They too did have a big provisioning number from the IL&FS group, but the stock did about 5% in terms of market gains. What would you do at 15, 18, Manav, with an IndusInd Bank?
See, the prices have already witnessed a series of decline from its peak and is bouncing from its oversold levels. Overall, the structure has been hampered on the weekly and the monthly charts. There is a possibility the stock will witness stiff resistance around 1600. So I don't see much of, at the current levels for traders, because the risk-reward ratio is not there, and the momentum indicators are still in a mixed zone. So at this current zone, one should one can look to avoid IndusInd Bank and can go for something like an ICICI or Axis Bank, since the structure is still positive. But one thing is there that until unless IndusInd Bank doesn't breach 1600 on the upside, I don't see any much momentum for this stock.
The other one, sorry, did we talk IndusInd Bank? That's the other one, because post the results had a big move yesterday, and the numbers look so good. Chakri, we spoke about a lot of corporate-facing banks. IndusInd Bank, what did you make of the commentary? It seemed like a clean-up quarter. Does it give you confidence to go out and buy that?
Indeed, you know, I think Sopti did a pretty good job yesterday, and coming out and saying that all the so-called troubled accounts they've provided for, whether it was IL&FS, etc. So from that perspective, they've done a one-shot cleanup. Their book is looking far stronger. You see their NIMs improving, and as well as the credit costs coming down. Stock is corrected about 15% in the last month or so because of these concerns. So I think over time, again, if it trades back to its multiples, I think there's sufficient upside in the stock, maybe 25-30% from over the next 6 to 12 months.
All right, just looking at the state tallies now. So in a state like Karnataka, 28 out of 28 the tally has come, but BJP has clocked in 22 seats versus a 5% seat share of UPA. Gujarat, all 26 seats, allocating 21 to BJP and 5 to UPA. You've got 24 out of 25 seats of Rajasthan which have been allocated, NDA taking 21 of those seats, and UPA holding on to just about 3 out there. And Uttar Pradesh, 47 out of 80, out of which 32 go to the NDA, SP, BSP holding on to about 11 seats.
Yeah, very early leads promise what the exit polls were suggesting to be true, but as I think both Devina and me have said, all through the last half an hour, very early days, so please be mindful of that.
These are just numbers that we're tallying right now, so I mean, it's a long day ahead, and we'll have to...
You've got to be careful, yes, for sure. But yeah, Devina, you're right. The numbers look pretty exciting.
All right, Chakri, anything else that is a conviction idea according to you?
We've said banks, and we've said some of these consumer names because of the fact that they've all bombed out. You know, the smaller ticket ones.
Give us a name.
Voltis is one, Crompton Consumer, Sheila Foam, they make mattresses. So these are all companies which are small ticket items versus buying a bike or a car. It's easier to buy, and therefore lesser on the problem on the pocket. So I think these are the ones who will see the first uptick. The valuations are still looking okay. And then we'll expand on to the autos maybe a few months down the road.
Okay, lots more to talk about. Keep that in mind. Chakri, Manav, request you to stay on for a bit longer. But the markets are just about to kickstart trade. And Devina, while the Asian screen may be awash with red, India will do what it does today. Yeah,
it will be charting its own course through the day. You will expect it to be a slightly more volatile day of trade, and it's the SGX Nifty also, and you can see the volatility there, the kind of peaks and troughs that it's making in the initial few minutes of trade. So pre-open, up on your screens in just a few seconds from now. SGX now is up about 0.5%. Rest of Asia still looking weak, down in the red. Nikkei, Hang Seng, as well as Shanghai, all of the three markets there trading with heavier cuts than what we're seeing. Kick-starting yesterday's session was Tech Mahindra, which took the biggest knock, and IndusInd Bank, whether they carry forward the gains, let's see. First off, and the first ticks coming up, Nifty is open positive, about to closer to almost 1%, and so is the case with the Sensex. That's Tech Mahindra, reversing some of the losses from yesterday. You've got Yes Bank, which is propelling itself 5.5% higher. Cipla has moved out. Remember, Cipla also reported its numbers yesterday. Stocks up about 4% in pre-open. Titan comes up on top. Z has moved up to 355. Indiabulls Housing 3.25% higher. Tata Motors up about 3%. SBI, Reliance, the heavyweight, they're inching towards 1400. You've got IOC, BPCL, these two names also need to watch out for. Bajaj Finance, that's the big one, 3,500 on Bajaj Finance, and scales new levels on a daily basis. And then amongst the losers, just two, Eicher Motors at about 20,800, and an HDFC Bank, which is actually just flat. There's not much of a change there. Coming to the currency then, 69.46 is some more strength that has come about, and you probably will see a bigger move once you have clarity on the actual outcome. And that's what most of the street is watching out for. The bond market yields also should be in focus. You would expect it to soften, and that's what's happened. 7.26 with regards to the bond market yields. Well, the early leads from a market perspective seem to be promising, as we said. For people who are tuning in right now, and the numbers have been on your screen, NDA 218, the BJP at I think 186 or thereabouts, and the UPA at about 99, with INC at about 57 out of those. Just that in West Bengal, Trinamool Congress seems to be having 13 seats. And SPBSP in Uttar Pradesh seem to be having 10 seats. Early days as yet, let's not dwell too much on these. We'll get to more analysis as and when more credible numbers start coming in. But the SGX Nifty is certainly leaking hard from that. The Nifty by itself in the first couple of minutes, as we said, has started off well. Very quick thoughts from Brijesh Singh. I believe he's joining us on the show as well. Brijesh, the index at about, let's say it's at about 0.5% higher. Would you go out and trade the index at all?
Good morning, Neeraj. No doubt today the results has been there and the ruling party would be coming back. The only thing to be watched out is that either it is 300 seats or either 350. If it has been there 350, then the Nifty is heading for a level of 12,200 or say 12,400. But what I would be looking from a technical point of view, that 11,950 to 11,965 band would be acting as a resistance. Anything above that, then definitely one can look out to buy. So I would be wait and watch strategy I would be doing. That Nifty crosses the level of 11,960 and sustain, then one can go for buying Nifty with a strict stop loss of 11,900 and play for the target of 12,125 or say 12,200 odd level.
All right, just to highlight that at pre-open at least, this is again a new record high for the index. So 11,883 was the last recorded high for the benchmark index. At pre-open, this is the new record high of I think about 11,895 odd. We'll see how the opening tally is.
Well, let's get to some more ideas. Manav, amidst all of this stuff that is happening, and you said SBI is your top idea. What else stands out? Would you trade something today? And if so, what is that pocket?
See, I'm very looking at the charts for the pharma index. This index has been in a downtrend since last 3.5 years odd, and is showing early signs of bottoming. Right, most of the stocks are near to its important weekly and monthly support levels. If you're looking at a chart of Lupin, it has it's back to its important lows of 720, and it's providing a very good risk reward. And looking at the derivative data, there has been a lot of short built up into the pharma space, and if the Nifty manages to sustain and move above 11,900, I will not be surprised to see a series of short covering coming into the pharma space. Importantly, Lupin has an important resistance at 765 on the upside, and if it closes above, I think pharma as a pack is could see a rally of 15-20%. So Lupin, for an immediate basis, we could see a rally towards 850. Cipla has also formed a series of strong support around the levels of 545 on the lower side, and in case if it manages to sustain and close above 580, I think the gate opens up for at least another 10-15% on the upside.
Brijesh Singh, some of your stock ideas for this morning?
I would be going for buy side with Reliance Bank. The stock of certain time frame over chart had made a high level formation with volume breakout. So somewhere around 1510, if it trades, then one can take a buy call with a stop loss of 1485 and take on a target of 1575 to 1580. Second buy call would be DTM. There on the stock yesterday had made a 52-week high of 9619 and it closed somewhere around 610. So present data on anything below 605, one can take a buy call with a stop loss of 592 and play for the target of 625 to 630. Anything above 625 in the next resistance was 665.
Okay, Brijesh, we'll leave it at that. Thanks much for taking the time out and being with us today. Appreciate your time. Those are stock ideas from Brijesh Singh as well. Chakri, we spoke about infra being that one pocket. Now, if indeed the leads turn out to be the way they are right now, and if indeed we have policy continuity, if infrastructure has to do well, allied pockets also have to do well. What stands out then?
In allied pockets, I think cement will do well, because you're seeing after quite a couple of years, maybe after about 3 or 4 years, the volume is picking up. And on the back of that, there is some amount of pricing depending on the market. So, you have companies like JK Cement, where white cement is doing well, whether it is Ramco Cements, southern markets are doing well. They have capacity expansion coming up, and so that is doing well. Then you have Heidelberg, which is strong in central India, and central India has been fairly strong in terms of volumes. And now all these guys, have not had any price increases. In fact, the price increases have been lesser than that of inflation over the last few years. So if some of that comes back, operating leverage will play out, and I think valuations are in their favor.
But it is, we've seen them taking price hikes. We've seen them, this is, I think, the 5th straight month in a row that you've seen these cement majors taking price hikes, but only to roll it back.
Indeed. So they're making an attempt. In fact, a couple of things, what they've attempted like a couple of months ago was rolled back, and again they've increased it. So, so I think they're trying to figure out a level, and I think which is a good sign, rather than sticking to a lower pricing, which they've done for the last 3 years in a row.
Yeah, although Nikki's dealer survey seemed to suggest that 5 months in a row now, save for South India, we've had some price hikes coming in. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And Sanghi Cement, the conversation yesterday seemed to suggest that utilization levels also have inched up. Watch out for the cement pack. That could do very well. As the pre-open rates on this very important day are settling down, let's just try and see where the markets are looking like starting off. 11,900. Ladies and gentlemen, this would be a start at new record highs for the Nifty 50, presumably for all the benchmark indices, and that's quite interesting. The other bit is, what does this do for the mid caps and the small caps as well, because they have been at the forefront in the last 3 or 4 days in terms of moving up. Hitherto not performing. The last 3 or 4 sessions, the broader markets have done very well. The market has been positive and therefore could be a turnaround. Too early. Let's not try and judge. This is what the day as well will look like, but the start seems to be very positive and banking is at the forefront. The Adani Group is at the forefront. Reliance is at the forefront. You now know the usual suspects which could mark the rally if indeed the day has to pan out the way the start is looking like shaping up. Chakri, I'll ask you an obvious question because so many people talk about it.
Yeah.
Would you go out and buy, at the risk of it sounding like a conspiracy theory, would you go out and buy the Adani Group stocks and the Reliance Industries? It's failed in the past, by the way. We know the experience of 2014 to 2019.
I would clearly buy Reliance Industries for the simple matter, nothing to do with elections, more to do with just the fundamentals of the company. The stock has corrected a fair bit in the last month. From about 1400, it corrected to about 1300s. So, and they have sufficient momentum, business momentum going on, whether they're refining business or whether it is geo or whether it is retail. So I think that's a stock which will see far higher highs in the coming months.
Okay, so the other point being the kind of foreign institutional money that we constantly talk about. So April was a really good month. May, maybe not so. But of late, in the last few days of trade, some money has started to come back in. But the real floodgates open post the announcement of the final government. And if NDA comes back into power, that's what's going to open the real floodgates. In light of that, a preemptive investment, we have a few stocks where FII holdings are relatively high. So in light of that, I mean, I know it will be a sort of a punt, but would that be another angle?
I think one is the frontline names continue to get the FII flows. So whether it's the Reliance, HDFCs, ICICI, Axis, so they will continue to see newer highs because of the flows. And then after that, then you would trickle down into the more liquid mid caps. I think that would be the pecking order.
Do you think mid caps have the propensity to propel them, means to go that much higher compared to the Nifty 50 itself?
The mid-cap index is still underperformed. Year to date, I think the mid-cap index is actually negative. And versus the Nifty is up about 7 or 8%. So the mid-cap hasn't done well. I think the discount, especially if you look at the small cap or the mid-cap, the discounts are still very manageable levels versus the large cap. So from that perspective, I think mid-caps, you know, they're downstream companies. Well, one large cap does well business-wise. They give orders to the smaller companies with the mid-caps. So if you're expecting an overall earnings recovery, the mid-caps eventually picks up.
Well, let's wait and watch if that happens or not. Just a brief on the leads and the numbers that are there right now, and then we'll ask Manav for some high-frequency trades for the day today as well. Take in some other investment ideas from Chakri Lokpriya too before the market starts. But this is what the numbers seem to be showing. 244 for the NDA, 102 for the UPA, SPBSP about 15, others about 56. That tally in SPBSP is largely due to Uttar Pradesh. And that state, at least the numbers that we have right now, seems to suggest that the NDA has about 45 out of the 64 on which the numbers have come out thus far. And that's quite remarkable because this is completely going contrary to what the people had thought in the past. I'm
actually veering towards Sanjay Pugalia's comment about getting initial trends before market starts.
Before market starts? Well, the initial trends are definitely there. Let's see if by 10 a.m., what Sanjay mentioned, that you will have some definitive ideas about what could be happening. It's touted to be a long election day today. But these numbers are coming out right now. I don't know if they change or no because it's a very different counting system this time around than what's happened in the past. But
let's see.
We'll go with the flow for the time being. Manav, quick thoughts. Reliance Industries, I was asking Chakri about fundamentals. He's very bullish on it fundamentally. No reason to be otherwise. What about the charts? What about a trade?
See, the chart is definitely quite well set up. You know, the stock has been in a very good established uptrend. I think that is one very important thing. And it has not breached below its important long-term averages in spite of this market volatility. You know, it has also bounced from its important key support of 1250. So I sense on the upside, yes, there are some important resistance close to the levels of 1400. But if that is breached on the upside, you can see all new momentum coming into Reliance, which could possibly open the gate for another 5-10% on a very short-term perspective. Also, like we are seeing on the trends, so 11,900 is where the markets are likely to open. So if the market sustains above those levels for another 15 minutes, I will not be surprised to see a swift rally. So any trader can have intraday stop loss of 11,500 for 11,700 for Nifty futures and also initiate long positions. Keeping that in mind, since the PSU banks are also going to see a good breakout, I think the mid-cap PSUs could also be another stocks to look at, because these are backed by important short covering rally, and going forward a short covering plus a long build up could add further throttle into it. So stocks like Canara Bank, OBC could be the stocks to look at today.
I think even Larsen and Toubro, record highs for Larsen and Toubro yesterday. 1,500 possible?
Yes, in fact, one important thing about Larsen has been that, since past 6 months, the stock has not witnessed a price correction. It has been in a sideways uptrend. Basically, this kind of a formation is it indicates a lot of bullish undertone, because there has not been price correction, there has been only time correction, and a breakout above that zone, it's quite bullish, and it confirms the continuation of the uptrend. So usually what happens is the range of the breakout is usually the upside target. In that case, a conservative target of 1650 is what comes on.
That's
on
your conservative target?
Yes, it's a conservative target, because the actual pattern target is close to 1900. So a conservative target is what 1650 comes out for Larsen, and I think we'll not be surprised to see this coming in next 2.5 months.
Post-market open, I would want to ask Chakri, versus a Larsen, would you go out for some of the smaller cap good names or smaller infra names? Would they give a better bang for the buck? That's the question.
Or just stay with Larsen, which saves your money rather than destroys your wealth?
Well, that's the question then. Are you in the save money mode or in the make money mode for the next 5 years, depending on what comes out? But Devina, there's 30 seconds left for the markets to kickstart trade. Manav, and ask you your top trading call for the day today.
I'll go with SBI. That will be my top trading bet, because I'm expecting a good breakout happen in the bank Nifty and the PSUs. The SBI is something which could throttle higher. It's breaking above its 10 years of breakout levels. So I think one should be ready for at least 10% move into SBI.
Okay. Just 10 seconds left for, well, not a historic start by any stretch of imagination, but a very important start. We'll start off at record highs, and that's quite important. 11,900, 1.2% higher. The last 6 days have been quite phenomenal for the equity markets. From those lows, we're back to all-time highs. The Sensex about 1% higher. The Nifty Bank leading the charge yet again. 500 points, 31,000 on the Nifty Bank. Ask anybody last Thursday morning, did they anticipate this? The answer would have been a no. The mid caps and the small caps will come up on your screen as well. Won't be surprised, they will have a big start. In all probability, they might be outperforming, because hitherto in the year they've been underperforming. Now the mid caps, the last 4 sessions or 5 sessions, have been really doing well on days when the markets have done well, by the way. Quickly get the heat map and show you what's moving and what's not. It's an important start to the trading day. It's an all green. It's an all green for the Nifty 50. No stock in the red. HCL Tech is the least performing stock. Very, very flat. Could bob into the red, but all 50 Nifty stocks start in the green. Well, that's a line for my social team as well, by the way. But banks are leading the charge. IndusInd Bank, State Bank of India, Indiabulls Housing Finance, Yes Bank, Reliance Industries is up, Z is up to about 3%. Essentially, everything is up, very little which is down. No point marking individual names. Almost everything is doing well. Just a couple of pockets that I wanted to highlight before I hand it over to Devina for marking what's happening across the broader end of the spectrum as well, because the Nifty 50 is looking extremely buoyant. What's happened to stocks which are trading at lifetime highs yesterday? The Just Dials, the JB Chemicals, the Heidelbergs of the world, they start off well. All of them are trading at record highs yet again. Just Dial in particular, 8th straight day of gain. Quite remarkable what happens to these stocks when FIs start putting in money. So that's one. 2, the usual suspects, maybe the Adani Group stocks. Let's see how they are starting in the session today. Nifty, non-Nifty names of the Adani Group. Adani Enterprises 6%, Ports about 2%, Adani Power about 3.5%. So quite remarkable the move that we're seeing in these stocks as well. Devina, what are you spotting?
Well, first off, Manav's call on SBI, that's like the top gainer on the index. But the problem with that is, I don't know if anybody would have got an entry point 4% lower. So that we'll ask Manav what to do then. And in the broader market space, things are looking strong. Stocks like Bajaj Hindustan 10% higher. Remember, Timken India reported its numbers. Yesterday was locked up in upper circuit. Today has opened with gains of another 10%. So 30% in the last 2 days for Timken. Really strong set of numbers coming in from this one. You've got Bombay Rayon, smaller name, a penny stock, up about 10%, but the last 7 days has gained about 30%. Reddington is up 6%. GMR Power and Infra is up 6%. Adani Enterprises is up 6%. Should look at the other Adani Group stocks as well. So Adani Green Energy, Adani Ports, Adani Power. Adani Ports is up about 2.5%. Adani Power another 4%. Dilip Buildcon, that's up about 4%. Last 7 days, 26% on the stock. You've got the likes of a Bharat Financial, MTNL, you've got Everready Industries, which has been a stock that has been beaten down off late, which is seeing some amount of interest coming there. But all in all, a really strong start even in the broader market space. 1,000 plus stocks have opened in the green and just a handful of 120 stocks in the red.
Well, looking strong, the leads for the NDA 258. Actually, it's been static now for a bit. The TMC's picked up very well in West Bengal, so keep that at the back of your mind as well. But the start is looking very, very promising for the equity markets. Let's see if it holds on. 11,857. Well, you could argue maybe 40 points off from the highs, but that's okay. A start in the green, and that is important. IndusInd Bank is at 1,590. This stock was at 1,476 when the results came out yesterday. It's gained 100 points in a matter of what, an hour and a half of trade yesterday and the first 4 minutes of trade today. It's quite remarkable. Brokerage is very bullish and the stock is starting off well. Remember, Chakri Lokpriya mentioned that there are some upside possibilities here. Manav mentioned that the start might be great, so you can go out and buy that. So do watch out for that one. State Bank of India 3% higher as well, but it's banks all the way, Reliance all the way. Larsen and Toubro, Chakri, that brings us to that conversation. Charts look strong. My question is, for an alpha seeker, is L&T the stock, or would you buy something else within cap goods stroke infra?
No, clearly you would buy L&T plus something else, because L&T represents something like 20-25% of all orders in this country. So from that perspective, L&T, yes. And then the Ashoka Buildcons, Nagarjuna Construction, Dilip Buildcon, all these stocks bombed out in the last 6 months. They're all down 40% odd, even at current levels. So even if you assume the previous was not a appropriate level, there's sufficient upside from current levels.
Timken India is another one that's up about 10% today. So last 2 days, it's gained 30%. In the last 7 days, it's up 40%. We spoke to the management yesterday. They were pretty optimistic about the future growth potential as well, and BS6 being, a key variable for them and working to their advantage as well. On the charts, Manav, at 740, would you buy Timken?
No, actually, we've already seen a very sharp move. There is no scope for any positive risk reward at the current levels, and actually it's a rally missed for a lot of people, and it's very difficult to anticipate such kind of a move. On the hindsight, if you're looking into this, I can just say that anybody who's holding into it should have a trail stop loss into such kind of a stock. It's coming up after a good consolidation breakout. So on the lower side, 680 should be a trail stop loss into this, and for new traders, I think you should switch on for another mid caps, which could give some probable good entry levels at such markets.
Any Adani Group stocks in that list?
I've seen, I think one point what I've seen into Adani Ports looks quite favorable. When I'm looking into the monthly charts of Adani Ports, the decline that it has seen from its all-time highs of 450, it looks more or less corrective in nature. And in last couple of months, the patterns that we witnessed into Adani Ports looks more or less accumulation patterns, which is indicating that the downside is definitely limited into Adani Ports. It has important support levels, which is around the levels of 360. So even for the risk reward ratio basis, it's looking very well poised, and I will not be surprised to see this stock to move on from here and see another 10-15% upside. Looking at the chart patterns, the momentum indicators after a good long time has come into a positive territory. So it's definitely a buy on dips, but not at the current levels. One, if you get near the support levels, you can look to enter it.
All right. 471 out of 542 seat leads have come, and it's a big gap between the NDA and the UP, and that's what Kaushik was saying in the morning. Towards when you start getting more credible numbers coming out, if the gap is big, then the possibility
of the reversal going against whatever is in lead
diminishes.
Yes, 282 and counting, 229 for the BJP. Well, if it's, I mean, these won't be the final numbers, but if indeed this is how the trend is going, Chakri, we are already at 1.5%, 191. Today's a day of exuberance.
I think 939, 11,939 is the high.
It's and then the bank Nifty even has up 2%, 66 points. Chakri, should one just hold on for a bit and wait for some cool off to come in? Or do you reckon that the FI flows which had stopped in the month of May, if they resume, then the market downside might anyways be limited?
I would buy at current levels, you know, because all these banks or even the market itself is not an expensive market. It's a market which hasn't had earnings. You know, earnings growth for the last 5 years has been about 5 or 7%, which is roughly the growth rate of inflation. So if this is what you're expecting from the next superpower, etc., then that's not the place to be. So I think earnings will pick up. It's a question of when, and markets are anticipating that pickup.
Well, it's certainly looking very, very strong right now. Indiabulls housing, unfortunately I can't ask Manav about it, the Indiabulls group stocks, but all of them seem to be doing well. Indiabulls Ventures too, I saw sometime around, was up about 4.5%, 5%, so good going. Infrastructure is up and about, something that Chakri Lokpriya alluded to. Banks, which both our guests alluded to, both fundamentally and technically looking very strong too. And some of the stocks like Bharat Financial, for example, are doing very well. I just have one question, Chakri, from my end, and which is on one final question from mine at least, and that is on the smaller financial names, smaller banking names. Now, I'll include Ujjivan, Equitas, and the small finance banks there, and I'll also include the DCB, Federal Bank, RBL for that matter. Now, are those pockets that you would put fresh money to work in?
There again, you need to be slightly more selective than the larger ones. But amongst the names that you mentioned, for example, whether it's an RBL, yes, or Ujjivan, yes. I don't know much about the other names. But yes, so clearly names like RBL, Ujjivan, I would clearly invest because they're well-run banks, well-run NBFCs, valuations are decent, and there's a sufficient growth that you could see in the next 1 year.
Okay. Ujjivan Financial has done remarkably well. They've hired a gentleman from HDFC Bank as well, who's the head of the, I think he's a smart guy in the digital operations business.
And that's what the management had also said, that because of that main aspect, you know, because for banks now, for the reach, they need to be digital.
Yeah, well, everything is going digital. Bloomberg Quint is anyways digital, so no surprise there. Manav, quick opening thoughts, and then we'll take in the final question with Chakri Lokpriya. But quick opening thoughts from amongst the large cap names that have started off 3, 4, 5% higher. What is it that stands out as a trade?
I think at the current levels, it's SBI and L&T at the current zone. So L&T has seen a good breakout and, you know, most importantly, it has sustained last 15 minutes move. The volumes are also have been quite good in last few trading sessions, and in fact in last 15 minutes we've seen a good build up into the stock. So I think if someone wants to trade L&T, one can also initiate fresh longs. A stop loss would be at 1450 on the lower side, good risk reward, and for an intraday momentum, will not be surprised to see another 50 to 100 points rally.
Okay, well, let's wrap with that confident point. Manav Chopra is bullish on the chart. Chakri Lokpriya is saying he's comfortable putting in money to work even now, while the markets are at 11,952, up 2%. Remarkable move, remarkable start for the markets, and the tallies up on your screen as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And, well, have a good, profitable day and the year ahead. Let's take a break on that note. On the other side, we're joined by Nilesh Shah of Kotak AMC and a battery of other experts joining during the course of the day. Stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint Live.